Welcome to Once Upon a Classic. Thank you for joining us for our audiobook series on the adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. In this video, we begin our journey with the very first story, A Scandal in Bohemia. Throughout this video, you will experience the intrigue, intelligence, and wit of Sherlock Holmes as he tackles one of his most memorable cases involving royalty, disguise, and the remarkable Ireneadler. Our channel will soon feature audiobooks of all the stories included in this classic collection, so make sure you stay tuned for more captivating mysteries. If you enjoyed this experience, please like, comment, and subscribe to support our channel and to be notified the moment we release the next video. Thank you for listening and enjoy A Scandal in Bohemia. Chapter 1. The Mysterious Visitor. To Sherlock Holmes, there is always one woman who stands out above all others. I've rarely heard him mention her by any other name. In his eyes, she surpasses and overshadows the entire female world. It was not love that he felt for Ireneadler. Holmes found all emotions, especially love, detestable to his calm, precise, but perfectly balanced mind. He was, I believe, the most perfect reasoning and observing machine the world has ever seen. But as a lover, he would only have placed himself in an awkward position. He never spoke of softer feelings except to make a joke or a sarcastic remark. For Holmes, emotions were admirable things only because they helped him study people's motives and actions. But for a trained reasoner, letting such feelings into his own carefully tuned mind was a distraction that might cast doubt on all his results. For Holmes, strong emotion would be as disruptive as grit in an instrument or a crack in one of his powerful lenses, and yet there was only one woman to him, and that was the late Ireneadler, of questionable and mysterious memory. I had seen very little of Holmes lately. My marriage had pulled us apart. My own happiness and the responsibilities of running a new household were enough to keep me busy. Holmes, who hated society in every form with his entire Bohemian spirit, stayed in our rooms at Baker Street, surrounded by his old books, going between drowsy spells from cocaine and bursts of great energy and focus. He was still fascinated by crime and spent his enormous talents and powers of observation picking apart the clues and solving mysteries that even the official police had given up on. From time to time, I would hear some vague story of his activities. A summons to Odessa for the Trepov murder, his investigation into the tragedy of the Atkinson brothers at Trincomalee, and finally the delicate mission he had pulled off so successfully for the royal family of Holland. But beyond these stories, which I only knew from the newspapers like everyone else, I knew little of my old friend and companion. One night, on March 20th, 1888, I was returning from a visit to a patient, for I had gone back to my medical practice. My route took me along Baker Street. As I passed the well-known door, forever linked in my mind with my early romantic days and the dark incidents of A Study in Scarlet, I felt a strong urge to see Holmes again and find out how he was using his remarkable mind. His rooms were brightly lit, and as I looked up, I saw his tall, thin figure pass twice as a dark shape against the blind. He was pacing the room swiftly and eagerly, his head down and his hands clasped behind his back. Having known him so well, I could read his mood and habits. He was at work again. He had come out of his drug-induced dreams and was caught up in a new problem. I rang the bell and was shown into the room that had once been partly mine as well. Holmes was not overly emotional. He rarely was, but I think he was pleased to see me. With few words but a friendly look, he motioned me to an armchair, tossed over his box of cigars, and pointed out the drinks and soda in the corner. Then he stood by the fire and looked at me with his unique, searching gaze. "Marriage suits you," he observed. "I think, Watson, that you have gained 7.5 pounds since I last saw you." "7?" I replied. "Actually, I would have guessed a little more. Just a touch extra, Watson. And I see you're practicing medicine again. You didn't tell me you were going back to work. How did you know? I observe it. I deduce it. How do I know that you've recently been out in very wet weather and that you have a clumsy and careless servant? Holmes, this is incredible. If you had lived a few hundred years ago, you'd have been burned at the stake. Yes, I went for a country walk on Thursday and came back filthy. But I changed clothes afterwards, so how could you know? As for Mary Jane, she's hopeless, and my wife has had to let her go. But I don't see how you figured that out. He chuckled and rubbed his long, nervous hands. It's simple, he said. My eyes tell me that the inside of your left shoe, right where the firelight hits, has 6 almost parallel scratches. They were clearly made by someone carelessly scraping off dried mud. That's how I deduced you'd been out in bad weather, and that you have a very careless maid in your service. As for your practice, if a man enters my room smelling of iodoform, with a black mark from nitrate of silver on his right finger, and a bulge on the right of his top hat where he keeps his stethoscope, I would have to be slow not to declare him a practicing doctor. I laughed at how easily he explained his deductions. When you explain it, it always sounds so easy that I think I could have done the same, but every time you surprise me, and I believe my eyes are as good as yours. Exactly, he replied, lighting a cigarette and dropping into his armchair. You see, but you do not observe. That's the difference. For example, you have often seen the steps that lead from the hall to this room. Many times. How many are there? How many? I don't know. Exactly. You have not observed. I know there are 17 steps because I have seen and observed. Since you enjoy these little problems and occasionally write about some of my lesser adventures, you might find this interesting. He handed me a sheet of thick, pink-tinted paper from the table. It arrived in the last post, he said. Read it aloud. The note was undated and had no signature or address. A gentleman will call upon you tonight at 7:45 to consult you about a matter of the deepest importance. Your recent work for one of the royal houses of Europe has proven you trustworthy with matters of great importance. We have this information from all quarters. Please be in your room at that hour, and do not be surprised if your visitor wears a mask. This is quite a mystery, I said. What do you think it means? I have no facts yet. It's a big mistake to make theories before having data. People start to shape facts to fit their theories, instead of shaping theories to fit the facts. But what do you make of the note itself? I carefully examined the handwriting and the paper. The author was probably well off, I said, trying to think like Holmes. Such paper could not be bought for less than half a crown per packet. It's unusually strong and stiff. Unusual, that's right, Holmes replied. It's not English paper. Hold it up to the light. I did, and saw a large E with a small g, a P, and another large G with a small t woven into the paper. What do you make of that? Holmes asked. It must be the maker's name or monogram. Not at all. The G and small t stand for Gesellschaft, the German word for company. P means Papier or paper. Now let's consider the egg. I'll check our Continental Gazetteer. He pulled out a thick brown volume. Eglonitz. Here we are, Egria. It's a German-speaking town in Bohemia, not far from Carlsbad. Known for the death of Wallenstein and for its glass factories and paper mills. Well, what do you think now? His eyes sparkled with excitement. The paper was made in Bohemia, I said. Exactly. And the man who wrote the note is German. Did you notice the unusual sentence structure? This account of you we have from all quarters received? Only a German would write that. So now we need to find out what this German, who writes on Bohemian paper and prefers to wear a mask, wants. And here he comes, if I'm not mistaken, to answer all our questions. As he spoke, there was the sharp sound of horses' hooves and wheels at the curb, followed by a loud ring at the bell. Holmes whistled. A pair by the sound, he said. Yes, he continued, looking out the window. A fine brougham and 2 beautiful horses. They must cost at least 150 guineas each. There's money in this case, Watson, if nothing else. Maybe I should leave, Holmes. Not at all, Doctor. Stay where you are. I am lost without my Boswell, and this promises to be interesting. It would be a shame to miss out. But your client, never mind. I may need your help, and so might he. Here he comes. Sit down in that armchair and pay close attention. A slow, heavy step echoed on the stairs and down the hall, then paused outside the door. There was a loud, authoritative knock. "Come in," said Holmes. A man entered, well over 6.5 feet tall, with the build of Hercules. His clothing was rich, though to English eyes a bit gaudy. Heavy bands of fur decorated his double-breasted coat. A deep blue cloak lined with fiery silk was fastened by a brooch with a single brilliant beryl. Tall boots trimmed with brown fur completed his outfit, giving him an air of almost barbaric wealth. He carried a wide-brimmed hat and wore a black mask across the upper part of his face. He had clearly just adjusted it, as his hand was still raised as he walked in. His lower face showed a strong personality, with a thick, hanging lip and a long, straight chin that hinted at stubborn determination. "You received my note?" he asked, his deep, harsh voice marked with a strong German accent. "I said I would come." He looked at both of us, unsure whom to address. "Break. $1S. "Please have a seat," said Holmes. "This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson, who often helps me with my cases. How should I address you?" "Call me Count von Kram, a Bohemian nobleman. I understand this gentleman, your friend, is honorable and discreet, someone I can trust with a matter of great importance. If not, I would rather deal with you privately." I started to leave, but Holmes stopped me with a hand on my wrist and pushed me back into my seat. "It's both or none," he said. "You can say to my friend whatever you can say to me." The Count shrugged. "Then I must start by binding you both to complete secrecy for 2 years. After that, this matter will no longer be important. Right now, it has enough weight to impact European history." "I promise," said Holmes, "and so do I." "You will excuse this mask," our guest continued. "The important person I work for wants his agent to remain unknown to you, and I admit that the title I gave you is not exactly my real one." "I was aware of that," Holmes said dryly. "The situation is delicate, and every step must be taken to prevent what could become a huge scandal and seriously damage one of the ruling families of Europe. To be clear, the matter involves the great house of Ormstein, hereditary kings of Bohemia." "I was also aware of that," said Holmes, settling into his chair, eyes closing. Our visitor looked surprised at the relaxed, lounging figure of the man who was supposed to be Europe's sharpest reasoner and most energetic agent. Holmes slowly opened his eyes and looked at his huge client, impatiently. "If your Majesty would state your case, I could advise you more easily." The man sprang to his feet and paced the room in agitation. Suddenly, desperate, he tore off his mask and threw it to the ground. "You are correct," he cried. "I am the king. Why should I try to hide it?" "Why indeed?" said Holmes. "Your Majesty didn't even have to say a word for me to know I was addressing Wilhelm Gottsreich Sigismund von Ormstein, Grand Duke of Kassel-Felstein and hereditary King of Bohemia." "You understand," our visitor said, sitting and passing a hand over his brow, "that I'm not used to handling such business myself. But the matter is so very delicate, I could not entrust it to an agent. I've come incognito from Prague just for this." "Then please tell me about it," said Holmes, closing his eyes again. "Here are the facts. 5 years ago, during a long stay in Warsaw, I met the well-known adventuress Ireneadler. I'm sure you know the name." "Kindly look her up in my index, Doctor," Holmes mumbled, eyes still shut. He had a system for filing all news clippings about people and things, so he could find information instantly. In this case, I found her biography squeezed between a Hebrew rabbi and a sea expert who wrote about deep-sea fish. "Let me see," said Holmes. "Born in New Jersey, 1858. Contralto. Sang at La Scala. Prima donna of Imperial Opera, Warsaw. Yes, retired from opera. Ha! Living in London now. Quite so. Your Majesty, as I understand, became involved with her, wrote some letters that could be used against you, and now wants them back. Yes, exactly, but how? Was there a secret marriage? No. No legal papers or certificates. None. Then I don't follow, Your Majesty. If she tried to use your letters to blackmail you or for any other reason, how could she prove they were real? There's the handwriting. Could be forged. My private stationery. Stolen. My own seal. Imitated. My photograph. Bought. We are both in the photograph. Oh, that is not good. Your Majesty, you have made a mistake. I was out of my mind. It was foolishness. You have put yourself in a difficult situation. I was only the crown prince then. I was young. Now I'm just 30. It must be recovered. We have tried and failed. Then Your Majesty must pay for it. She will not sell it. Then it must be stolen. 5 attempts have been made. Twice burglars ransacked her house. Once we intercepted her luggage. Twice she has been stopped in the street. No results. No clue? None. Holmes laughed. It is quite an interesting little problem, he said. But quite a serious one for me, the king answered reproachfully. Very much so. What does she plan to do with this photograph? To ruin me. How? I am about to be married, so I have heard. To Clotilde Lothman von Saxe-Meiningen, the second daughter of the King of Scandinavia. Her family has very strict principles. She is the very essence of delicacy. Any doubt about my character would end the marriage at once. And Ireneadler? Threatens to send the photograph to them. She will do it. I know she will. You do not know her, but she is strong-willed. She has the face of a beautiful woman, and the mind of the most determined man. She would go to any lengths to prevent me from marrying another woman. You are sure she has not sent it yet? I am sure. Why? She said she would send it the day the engagement is publicly announced. That's next Monday. So we have 3 days, said Holmes with a yawn. That's fortunate. I have a few other things to look into right now. Your Majesty will, of course, stay in London for now. Certainly. I'll be at the Langham, using the name Count von Cram. I'll send you word about our progress. Please do. I will be very anxious. And money? You have a blank check. Absolutely. I'd give a whole province to have that photograph returned. And for expenses now. The king took out a heavy leather bag and put it on the table. There are £300 in gold and 700 in notes, he said. Holmes wrote a receipt and handed it to him. And the lady's address? Holmes asked. Bryony Lodge, Serpentine Avenue, St. John's Wood. Holmes made a note of it. One more question. Was the photograph a cabinet size? It was. Good night, Your Majesty. I trust we'll have good news for you soon. Good night, Watson, he added, as the royal carriage rolled away down the street. If you'd be so kind as to come tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I'd like to go over the details of this case with you. Chapter 2. A Day of Disguises and Discoveries. At 3 o'clock sharp, I arrived at Baker Street, but Holmes had not yet returned. The landlady told me he had left the house just after 8 that morning. I sat by the fire, determined to wait as long as needed. I was already engrossed in his current case. Though it did not have the grim or bizarre qualities of the crimes I'd previously written about, the unusual nature of the investigation and the status of the client made it fascinating. Holmes's keen reasoning and masterly approach always drew me in. I was so used to his success that I never even considered the idea he might fail. It was almost 4 when the door opened, and in walked a disheveled, drunken-looking groom, with messy hair, side whiskers, a flushed face, and tattered clothes. Even though I knew Holmes could disguise himself expertly, I needed a triple take before I recognized him. He nodded at me and vanished into the bedroom. emerging 5 minutes later in his usual respectable tweed suit. He stretched out by the fire and laughed so hard he nearly choked, eventually collapsing limp with laughter in the chair. "Well, really!" he called out, then broke out laughing again until he had to lie back, helpless. "What is it?" I asked. "It's too funny. You'll never guess what I did with my morning or how I ended up." "I can't imagine. I suppose you've been watching Miss Ireneadler's home and habits." "Exactly. But the events took a most unusual turn. Listen, I left after 8 this morning, dressed as an out-of-work groom. Among horsey men there's a special camaraderie. Join them, and you'll learn everything." I quickly found Briony Lodge, a small villa with a back garden, built up to the street in front, 2 stories, a chub lock on the door. The sitting room is on the right, well furnished, with big windows almost down to the floor, and those ridiculous English fasteners any child could open. In the back, there wasn't much of note except that the passage window could be reached from atop the coach house. I circled and examined closely, but saw nothing else interesting. Next, I strolled down the street and, as expected, found there was a mews down a lane by the garden wall. I helped the ostlers groom their horses in exchange for 2 pence, a glass of half and half, 2 puffs of shag tobacco, and all the information I could want about Miss Adler. They also told me about half a dozen other people I couldn't care less about but had to listen to anyway. "And what about Ireneadler?" I asked. "Oh, she's turned every man's head in that area. She's the prettiest thing in a bonnet, according to everyone in Serpentine Mews. She lives quietly, sings at concerts, goes out for a drive at 5, returns at 7 for dinner, and seldom goes out at other times except to sing. She only has one visitor, but he comes often. He's dark, handsome, and dashing, a Mr. Godfrey Norton of the Inner Temple. Cabmen love being confidants, and they'd driven Norton home dozens of times from Serpentine Mews. I listened to all they had, then walked up and down near Briony Lodge to figure out my next steps. Godfrey Norton turned out to be key. He's a lawyer, which made things more complex. What was his connection to Adler, and what was the reason for his constant visits? If Adler was his client, maybe she'd handed the photograph over to him. If not, it was less likely. The answer decided if I should keep watching Briony Lodge or check out Norton's office. It broadened the investigation. Sorry to get into so much detail, but it might help you understand. "I'm following you closely," I replied. I was still deciding what to do when a hansom cab pulled up at Briony Lodge. Out jumped a striking man, dark, aquiline, and mustached. He was definitely the man I had heard about. He seemed in a hurry, yelled at the cabman to wait, and charged past the maid as though he lived there. He stayed about half an hour. I caught glimpses of him pacing in the sitting room, talking animatedly, waving his hands. I saw nothing of her. Soon he came out, looking flustered. At the cab, he checked his watch and shouted, "Drive like mad to Gross and Hankey's in Regent Street and then to the Church of St. Monica in the Edgware Road. Half a guinea if you do it in 20 minutes. They sped off, and I wondered if I should follow when another carriage, a neat little landau, rattled down the lane with its coachman barely dressed properly and harness all over the place. Before it stopped, she burst out of the hall and into it. I glimpsed her. She was beautiful, the type of woman a man could die for. "Church of St. Monica, John," she cried, "and half a sovereign if you make it in 20 minutes. It was too good to miss. I considered running after her or jumping on the landau, but just then a cab rolled by. The driver gave me a look, but I hopped in. "Church of St. Monica," I said. "Half a sovereign if you make it in 20 minutes. It was 25 minutes to 12, so I knew exactly what was happening. My cabbie was fast, but the others got there first. Their cabs and horses were steaming outside the church when I arrived. I paid and hurried inside. The only people there were the couple I'd followed and a surpliced clergyman. They were gathered at the altar. I strolled up the side aisle, acting like an idle passer-by. Suddenly all three turned. Norton ran at me. "Thank God," he cried. "You'll do." "Come." "What for?" I asked. "Come quickly, only 3 minutes or it won't be legal." Before I knew it, I was dragged to the altar, mumbling responses whispered in my ear, vouching for things I knew nothing about, and inadvertently helping tie Ireneadler spinster to Godfrey Norton bachelor. In a flash they were thanking me, and the clergy beamed. It was the most outrageous situation I'd ever found myself in, and that realization is what set me laughing. Turns out their license wasn't in order, and the clergyman wouldn't marry them without a witness. My lucky appearance spared the groom from dashing off to find a best man. The bride gave me a sovereign, and I planned to wear it on my watch chain. "What an unexpected twist," I said. "And then?" "It meant my plans were at risk. The couple might leave immediately, forcing me to act fast. But at the church door they split up. He went to the temple, she back to her house. She told. Chapter 3. The Photograph and the Woman. I stayed at Baker Street that night. The next morning, while we were having our toast and coffee, the King of Bohemia rushed into the room. "You have really got it," he exclaimed, grabbing Holmes by the shoulders and looking at him eagerly. "Not yet," Holmes replied. "But you have hopes?" "I have hopes." "Then let us go. I am impatient to start." "We need a cab," Holmes said. "No, my carriage is waiting downstairs," the king said. "That will make things easier." We went downstairs and got into the carriage, headed once again for Briony Lodge. "Ireneadler is married," Holmes remarked. "Married? When?" "Yesterday." "But to whom?" "To an English lawyer named Norton." "She cannot love him," the king said. "I hope she does," Holmes replied. "And why do you hope that?" "Because if she loves her husband, she will not want to bother you again. If she does not love you, she has no reason to interfere with your plans. It is true. And yet, I wish she had been of my own rank. What a queen she would have made." The king fell into a moody silence as we arrived at Serpentine Avenue. The door to Briony Lodge was open. An older woman stood on the steps, watching us with a sarcastic expression as we got out of the carriage. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I believe?" she asked. "I am Mr. Holmes," Holmes answered with a questioning look. "My mistress said you would likely come. She left this morning with her husband by the 5:15 train from Charing Cross going to the Continent." "What?" Holmes stepped back, shocked and surprised. "She has left England, never to return." "And the papers?" the king asked hoarsely. "All is lost." "We shall see," Holmes said. He hurried past the servant and rushed into the drawing room, with the king and me following. The furniture was in disarray, shelves and drawers open, as if everything had been quickly searched before leaving. Holmes went to the bell pull, pulled back a small sliding panel, and reached inside. He took out a photograph and a letter. The photograph was of Ireneadler, dressed in evening clothes. The letter was addressed to Sherlock Holmes, ESQ, to be left till called for. Holmes tore it open, and we all read it together. It was dated at midnight the night before and said this: "My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, you did very well. You completely fooled me. Until the fire alarm I had no idea, but then, when I realized what I had done, I started thinking. I had been warned about you. I was told if the king hired an agent, it would be you, and I was given your address. Still, you made me reveal what you needed. Even after I got suspicious, it was hard to think badly of such a kind old clergyman. But I've been trained as an actress. Wearing men's clothes is nothing new for me, and I often use the freedom it gives. I sent John, the coachman, to watch you, ran upstairs, changed into my walking clothes, and came down just as you were leaving. I followed you to your door, and made sure you were really interested in me. Then I wished you good night, perhaps unwisely, and went to the temple to see my husband. We both thought the best thing was to leave, since you were such a formidable opponent. So you will find the place empty when you arrive tomorrow. As for the photograph, your client can rest easy. I love and am loved by a better man than him. The king may do as he likes, and I will not bother him. I keep the photograph only to protect myself, and to have a way to defend myself if he ever tries anything in the future. I leave a photograph here that he might like to have, and I remain, dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, very truly yours, Irene Norton, formerly Adler." "What a woman! Oh, what a woman!" cried the King of Bohemia when we finished reading. "Did I not say how quick and determined she is? She would have been a wonderful queen. Is it not a pity she was not my equal? From what I have seen, she is indeed on a different level to you, your Majesty," Holmes said coldly. "I am sorry I could not bring your business to a more successful end." "On the contrary, my dear sir," the king said, "nothing could be more successful. I trust her word. The photograph is as safe as if it were burned." "I'm glad to hear you say that," Holmes replied. "I owe you a great debt. Tell me how I can reward you." "This ring—" He slipped an emerald snake ring from his finger and offered it. "Your Majesty has something I value even more," Holmes said. "Just name it." "This photograph." The king stared in surprise. "Irene's photograph?" "Of course, if you want it." "Thank you, your Majesty." "Then there is nothing else to be done. I wish you a very good morning." He bowed, turned away without shaking the king's hand, and left with me for his rooms. And that is how a scandal almost affected the kingdom of Bohemia, and how Mr. Sherlock Holmes's best plans were beaten by a woman's cleverness. He used to laugh at the cleverness of women, but I have not heard him do it recently. When he speaks of ireneadler or her photograph, it is always with respect, calling her the woman